one of the things that I've certainly noticed in my ministry, in our ministry, is that uh, deliverance has really increased exponentially in the last sort of 4 or 5 years.
Oh wow.
And I think that that is probably it could be directly related to both the complacency of the church, but also the access that people have. When they were locked down during COVID and people were locked down, they were just watching TV. And
Yeah.
then what happens? You get programs like Lucifer, you get programs and it's kind of like programming the world for the readiness, or to get them ready for the emergence of one. In terms of the Antichrist and being of a Nephilim sort of nature, would that mean then that he would obey the laws of biology and have to, maybe could he, in fairness, if that is the case, could he sort of progress through his teens really quickly into adulthood really quickly, because he's not exactly of the human bloodline?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, I'm sure that would come with all sorts of different things because he'd be half human and then half Satan. And I
Yeah.
think that the way that it'll be presented is that this is the coming of the golden age. And I don't know which deception they're going to go with. I don't know if they're
Yeah.
going to say the Antichrist is part alien. Maybe maybe they're going to say it's aliens and this is the golden age, or because magic will be a thing now. Maybe they will just admit, hey, there are gods, they're real, but like the father of they're not going to call him the Antichrist, but the father of this figure, that's the real God, and you can tell because he's basically a superhuman. He can do all this miraculous things. Even the false prophet can
Yeah.
do miraculous things, and that's what's going to really going to deceive people. So then people are going to want a piece of that for themselves, and that might be what the mark of the beast is. And so yeah, I mean that can get into all sorts of different areas, but yeah, I think you're right. I mean there would be something noticeably different. And I'm not even
Yeah.
saying that he would necessarily be a physical giant. He probably just looked like anybody else, But and maybe that's what all these genetic experiments are all about, to try to figure out a way to
Fine.
make him look as human as possible,
Yeah.
as for human. Because I mean, there's these stories of these black-eyed kids, and I
Hmm.
think what makes sense to me. This is just a theory, but so people are seeing these what look like kids, but when they get around them and they see their eyes are black, and then the people that are around them get the most just hollow, awful, evil feeling from these things. I think I think this hybridization, this whole experiment, this whole program that they're running, is to genetically do it in a way where the hybrid is as human looking as possible, but
Hmm.
that's still demon, alien, fallen angel, Nephilim, whatever, enough that they're still going to be loyal to their overlords. Because you can't have a functioning Antichrist, this world leader, if nobody can stand to be around him because he's just so evil, and we just know we just know that there's something off about it. There's something off. So I don't think that the Antichrist is necessarily going to be a giant, or it's not going to be
Yeah.
a Nephilim in the ways that it was in the Old Testament. Because another thing too, in the Old Testament, back then in the world, it was all about brute force. Like whoever was the strongest is the one that won. It's not really like that now. Now it's more about whoever is smartest, whoever is more
Hmm.
cunning. That's the one that's in charge. So I think they're trying to do it in a way where it's not going to be a physical giant, because I think that would just freak too many people out. But he's gonna look as human as possible, seem as human as possible, where we don't have this just natural aversion to whatever this being is. People talk about like the uncanny valley, that there's something
Yeah.
in humanity, and a lot of the scientists say it's an evolutionary thing. I don't think that. I think it's a genetic memory, but I think what's happening there. So the uncanny valley, basically, it's the more human something looks while it's not a human, the more put off we are by it naturally. And then scientists have this idea that there was something early on in our human development, and this is in the evolutionary thing, and I'm not an evolutionary guy at all, but this is what they say, that there was some other thing that looked like us, but was so evil and threatening that we evolved a natural aversion to them. I don't think it's evolution. I think what this is the Nephilim and hybrids and
Hmm.
stuff. I believe that, I believe genetic memory is a real thing. You can, and I don't mean like, I don't mean in the new agey way that if you have a kid, he's going to dream things about your life or your grandparents'
Yeah.
life. I don't mean that. I just mean in instincts. So
Hmm.
I think that all throughout the world, Genesis 6 was such a big deal for a long time. God said what? It was like 120 years before he was going to bring the flood. So these things were on the earth all over and every part of the earth for at least that long before the flood. Um, and so because of that and just how threatening and awful they were, we were, of course, had a natural aversion to these things. Well, I think now that anything that looks like a replica of humanity but isn't human, it's a natural genetic, just like inborn, just instinct. And I think that's
Hmm.
why everybody, Christian or non-Christian, that sees these black-eyed kids, they naturally have an aversion to them. They're naturally just scared, and it's not just because they have black eyes. I've seen, I've seen when I grew up in the '90s and 2000s. We had colored contacts we would wear all the time. I mean, I went to school, people would have black eyes. It was a fashion thing. That alone isn't enough to scare somebody. It's not just the black eyes. There's
Yeah.
something else. There's something in our genetics that just this tells us something is off there. So I think that they're through these experiments, they're trying to, in a sense, figure out what that is and breed that out, get that out, so that when when their end game comes, when it's time for the Antichrist to be born, that person will have the best chance at not being like, because he's got to be charismatic. People got to like him. People have to be able to be around him. People have to think that he's human
Hmm.
enough to relate to. He's got to come across that way. So to me, it makes sense if that's their end goal. It makes perfect sense why they're doing what they're doing and why they're doing it in the way that they're doing it. I think this explains the whole alien abduction phenomenon, and the Antichrist and how everything's gonna play out.
Could this be where we see the likes of the technology and biologic sort of integration happening, in the sense that if you read something apocryphal like the Book of Giants and you read that, they don't come across as very intelligent as creatures, right? Now, whether
Right.
that's the case, because we know that demons are cunning, and but if it's a case of like this Antichrist is going to be somehow, like I'm thinking of the first thing that comes to mind is Elon Musk's neurochip,
Yeah.
the that idea that he has maybe hyper intelligence, he's very quick, very smart, very articulate that way. Could it be the integration of things like that, integration of biologics and technology?
100%. Yeah, 100%. And even more than that, the eventual merging of technology and real magic, like occult magic, when it's actually available again after the rapture. Because think about it, like right now, I mean, I would never get a brain chip. Like
Yeah.
I would never, ever in a million years would I ever do that. But for people that do, it's still a complicated thing to be able to hack that and then actually try to control the person through that.
Yeah.
It seems like through our technology right now that and the way the brain chip works, that's not really possible right now. But that could be an eventual goal. If a bunch of people have brain chips in the future, um, but then Rapture happens, but now you can integrate magic into that as well. I mean, well then possibilities are limitless on what somebody could do with that. So it's going to be
Mhm.
a much different world. So yeah, I think that's why they're starting in with the transhumanist stuff, blending in technology with humanity. And just to preface that, or to there are some things that are good, and the way that I talk about this I just did a video on transhumanism. It's because I have a prosthetic hip. So somebody might say, well, Josh, people are getting a brain chip because they're paralyzed and they want to
Yeah.
have access to their limbs again. How is that any different than you getting a hip replacement? Well, for one thing, my hip replacement can't be hacked. That's one of them. But but really, it's to restore what was missing.
Yeah.
It's in place of a real hip that's supposed to be there. Mine was diseased and deformed, and it had to be cut out and removed, and a new one put in. My fake hip is not. I mean, it's better than the diseased one I had, but it's not better than a normal person's hip. Normal
Hmm.
person's hip should last their whole lives. I got to get these replaced like every 15 years. So it's not an improvement, but in a way, it restores.
Yeah.
My eyesight's terrible. I have to wear glasses. I can. This only allows me to see as good as people can normally see, and it's kind of inconvenient. It's not really it's not an improvement on normal eyesight because I have to wear glasses, whereas somebody
Hmm.
else that doesn't have any problem with their eyes, they don't have to. So, so I think it's all about restoration versus glorification. If like okay, so like LASIK eye surgery, I've considered it. I might do it, might not. I'm still thinking about it. Some of it kind of freaks me out. I don't know. Not in
Yeah.
a spiritual way, just lasers in my eyes and
Yeah. I
Ugh.
get you.
Yeah. So I don't think there's anything wrong with LASIK eye surgery because it's just restoring something that's there. But if they were like, hey, for an extra charge, we can give you night vision, or you can see through walls. That's
Yeah.
glorification. That's something
Yeah.
else, and that's where all this stuff is headed. My fake hip lets me walk, but I can't kick a football a mile. I can't do something superhuman with that. So the brain chips, it's starting out they always start out altruistically. It's starting out this will help people who are paralyzed. This will help people see if they're blind. All of this stuff. But what is it going to turn into? Your brain isn't missing a chip. That's not why you're paralyzed or why you can't see. It's not that you had a chip there and it's missing now and now you're paralyzed. So you're adding something that wasn't really there. Uh, but beyond that, even if the brain chip was totally fine, nothing wrong with it, all it did was just make people not paralyzed and they can use their limbs again. And let's say it's not even connected to the internet or anything. It's just that's all it does. Okay, fine, but where is that leading? Because
Mhm.
clearly they're not going to stop there. They're not just going to
Yeah.
stop at. They're going to push it and see what's possible. They're gonna use these things to activate parts of the brain to see what human beings can do. And
Hmm.
and I mean, they're even mixing this stuff with psychedelic stuff because a lot of these tech people are really into psychedelics, which that's just sorcery. That's just straight up
Yeah.
sorcery. I mean, that's all that is. And they like talking to these extra dimensional beings. It's like, man, but those are those false gods. Those are those evil false gods that are deceiving you and clearly guiding you towards these things. So yeah, I believe all of this is going to integrate into something truly horrific that probably even all the stuff we're talking about today will pale in comparison to what it's actually going to be like in the world during the tribulation. Yeah, it's weird. This is why I think people like me and you and probably a lot of the audience are thinking like this is the end of end times. We can
Yeah.
all kind of feel it. My wife and I have been talking about this lately, and we've been seeing a lot of posts just from random people lately. It seems like every Christian can just kind of feel it. And if I'm wrong, maybe it's just us. But have you been feeling that? And you're a pastor. Have you been?
Yeah.
Have people been
I
talking
actually,
about
funny enough, I put up a post on our church Facebook page just saying that it seems to me like the days are shortening, the time is
that?
quickening, and our Lord is coming back very, very soon.
Yeah. Amen.
There's that imminency growing,
Yeah.
and I think that I think you can feel it. If you've got the Holy Spirit, you can feel it's like, knowing when the bus is coming. It's knowing when your flight's coming. It's knowing when
Yep.
we don't know the day nor the hour, but you can certainly sense we're approaching that time. And I kind of, with everything that you've been saying, I kind of look at that and I think that it's not just that it's happening all of a sudden. If you look back at the 1850s, and 1859, we got the uh, Origin of Species by Darwin.
Yeah.
Then Galton in 1883 coins the phrase eugenics. But then you have that, so that's the science part. But at the same time, you had around the same time, Madame Blavatsky. You had the development of the uh, order of the I've forgotten the Hermetical Order of the Golden. I've just forgotten it. Um, and then you had Aleister Crowley come on the scene. And that's where I was sort of connecting it with the psychedelics because he
Yes.
would have used that to contact entities that he would have drawn to look like our modern depiction of an alien, but
Yeah.
really it's a demon. And it seems to be the two working hand in hand together to bring us to this point.